consequences.
So piggy banking off of what was previously stated, Sister Azani was speaking about the story. If you don't know your story or your narrative, you can be fooled by racism, white supremacy, in which our great Baba Neely Fuller spoke to us about. So knowing our story and knowing where we come from and what we don't been through and the things that we have been through allow us to connect. It can allow us to have those bonds because growing up in this society, whether in the Caribbeans or in the Americas or anywhere that we have been colonized or enslaved or raped or subjugated, we end up, Sister Zandi mentioned our hearts being wax cold from the scripture, but we end up growing thinking that we're alone, thinking that we're going through things by ourselves, thinking that we're going through situations that has never been for experienced. But thankfully, with churches like the Holy Coptic Church of the Black Messiah or a community, examples of great men and women and people around us, we are able to connect in those bonds and sharing in our trauma or sharing in our suffering. So it's always important that we come together in this remembrance because it connects us, and the remembrance allows us to realize that we have more work to do. I would just speak for myself in learning and becoming conscious. As a lot of people say, when you become conscious, I didn't understand the importance of my own role into doing what I needed to do to keep this moving forward. As in Sister Azani also spoke about that, and you did as well, passing the baton. When that baton gets passed to you, that means you have to do the work. You have to make sure the future generations connect and that they bond with each other. You have to come up with the activities. You have to come up with the network and the connection and creating the community so we can always remember these teachings. And thankfully, we have a Holy Coptic Church of the Black Messiah that says, no, we do have a Sicily. Remember BB Darth Height. Remember BB Marimba Annie. Remember Baba Martin Luther King Jr. Remember Baba Arturo Schomburg. Remember all of our great BBs and Babas. Remember Baba Marcus Garvey. In remembering them and looking at the compensatory code, the counter racism, and reading the ISIS papers, it allows us to bring back that memory, and we share it amongst each other, share it amongst our family, so we can keep that remembrance and so it can keep us connected.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much, my brother. Excellent. Elder Owen,
Yes,
how are you doing?
Namaskar. I'm doing
Namaste.
well, thank you.
All right. The overall of this month's theme is remembrance for a better future. Encourages us to reflect and take action. When it comes to taking action, how important is civic responsibility? When it comes to taking action, how important is our civic responsibility?
That's probably the most important part of the taking action because we have to be able to connect with something that's greater than us, that goes beyond the individual self. You know, Marimbani teaches us that our culture is what inoculates us. This approach to things from a group perspective allows us to now transfer that energy into the civic areas of our life so that we can now start to impact the societies in which we find ourselves. It impacts the individuals we encounter with, and we start to now bring about those changes. We become an active participant in the creative process that we want to see come about. So we can't do it excluding those arenas that allow us to interact with others and allow us to impact change in our environment. So those civic responsibilities allow us to connect ourselves and use our influence in the realms of space and the civic organizations that allow us to now influence those organizations and those interactions for the betterment of the group and the community as a whole. And those civic organizations have always been the way that our great Black ancestors and liberators have used civic organizations to affect change. And we must follow the blueprint that they did in order to bring about similar results today.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you. Now let's get at it with this personal reflection, right? That's this week's theme, foundation of this week. when it comes to each of us, everybody's going to watch this 20 years from now. When they're reflecting on their personal involvement or responsibility, how important are the intangible? Like, what are some intangible actions? We know the tangible, so I would ask each of you, starting with Elder Owen, tell me some tangible actions each can take, and then tell us, please, some intangible actions, things that may seem not important or unimportant, but really hold a lot of weight, if you don't mind.
Certainly. Well, you know, the tangible actions, those things that everyone can see and everyone can measure and everyone can put their fingerprints on, things like becoming involved with organizations that are about liberation, going out and reaching the community through mentoring programs with young adults and being able to go into the soup kitchens and the depressed areas and support our people in need. That physical insertion of an individual can result in those tangible interactions that everyone can see. Everyone can see the results of that, and they can see that action and taking place. But but in order for that to happen, there must be those intangible changes, those intangible actions that most people won't see on the surface level, that allows that individual to go through a conversion, a metamorphosis, a changing first in the way they think, and now it's going to result in them being able to commit to the activity, the action that bring about the results of change in our communities. And that's why we have a book in our ministry, our Holy Cryptic Church. It's called The Complete Etiquettes of Nobility. And in this book, this is not a book. It's a blueprint. It's a code on how individuals can now address the intangibleness that allows them to change. So it has these 9 divine values that we call maxims. It allows an individual to take audit of self so that they can get on a path where that conversion of the self allows them to align with the conversion of the group. It talks about having confidence in yourself. And we know confidence is the rock, is the foundation, as Marcus Garvey says. When you don't have confidence, you're already losing the race that you're in. It talks about willfully working to be noble man or noble lady. It talks about achieving your true self. And what are the steps to achieving this true self? It talked about being willing to laugh at your awkward moments. We take ourselves so seriously. We take every mistake we make so seriously. We don't think we're worthy because of all the negative stereotypes we've been beating over our heads with for so many years. But these maxims of nobility that allows us to address how we eat, what we eat, how we dress, how we present ourselves in public. How do we defeat the one-sided, adverse, and destructive energies of our being? How do we embrace the original standards that humanity had? So these are intangible things that allows the conversion to take place on this path to now being able to impact our communities for the better. It starts with the self, and that self aligning to goals of the group now brings about a concerted effort and a closed fist approach to getting things done.
Thank you. Thank you, Elder Owen. Brother Demarius, talk to us.
Yes, as Elder Owen was just saying, I want to hone this in because if somebody was looking at this from 20 years from now, you gotta read. You have to open up a book. And I can see that in this latter day and in this time in our community, a lot of us don't read. We don't open up the books, we don't do the necessary studying, and we don't apply the things that we are currently learning. So you have to read, and not just read, but you have to comprehend what you read. And you have to actually study it and apply it and start to live it. You have to read the compensatory code of counter racism. You have to read the ISIS papers. You have to read the philosophies and opinions of Marcus Garvey. Even here at the Holy Church of the Black Messiah, to get a better understanding and comprehension, you have to read was African Christianity before Europe's Christ. You have to read the Sumerian, how Egyptian and Sumerian realities became the Bible's mythology. You have to read the original sacrificial shepherd. You have to read and keep reading and don't stop reading because we see we are in a time where they're getting rid of our books. They're getting rid of our pictures. They get our images is being getting stripped from us. They don't want our teachings in the school system anymore. It's being getting rid of. So in order to combat that, we have to read our stories. We have to read our narratives in order that we may move forward. Because this subject, or this African Holocaust Month, is talking about a better future. In order to have a better future, we got to look at the past and we got to know what's in the past. And in order to do that, you have to read and study, because they hide it in the books. They hide all the teachings in the books. You have to, it's a lot, because I see this even around my niece and my nephew, my nephews and things like that, and amongst my own family. Reading is frowned upon. Although reading is what gets us to that next level. Reading is what give the next man something over you. Even with school, you got to have books. They give you books for history class. They give you a book for mathematics. They give you a book for your science class. They give you a book for even your art class. They give you books so you can get the basics of what you need to do. So reading is the important tool so that we may remember and continue to go forward.
Brother Damaris, before we go into this next question for you and Elder, you said reading is frowned upon. Help me understand.
Reading.
You said even in your own family, reading is frowned upon. Help me to understand. Not you and your wife, but right? What do you mean?
When I say reading is frowned upon, what I'm saying is that we don't look at reading as a tool anymore. We don't look at reading as a powerful thing. It's like a lot of what you talk about. Scholarship has died in the Black community because nobody is reading, nobody is doing the studying, nobody is doing the necessary research. So instead of reading a book, it's like reading the book is the worst thing that you do. Oh no, I don't want to read. I'd rather go play my video game. I'd rather sit on YouTube and scroll through these reels and listen to people talk, or I'd rather listen to music. Somewhere along the lines, reading has getting pushed in the back burner. And I can say that even it's worse now, because I had a teacher I met at the gas station one day. It was about 4 months ago. One of my high school teachers, her name was Miss Mincer. And I just asked her, I was like, how's the school system? She's like, it's bad. It's really bad. These kids don't want to study. They don't want to read. They always on their phones, and they clicking their pictures. And she's like, it's not like when you was in school. You got in trouble for reading a book. And that's the thing. People don't want to read no more. Even as I was growing up, when I was reading, they called me a nerd. I wasn't like the popular dude. Let me say that. I wasn't the popular, fit in the crowd and all that. I was the young person who will go home. It's either I'm reading the Bible or I read an actual series. You get on us about the Twilight series and things like that, and Mortal Instruments and Percy Jackson's. I was that kid. I was reading those kind of books and things like that. But once I came into consciousness, that's when I got introduced to the Baba Amos Wilson, the Blueprint for Black Power. That's when I got introduced to the ISIS papers, and the keys of the colors, and I started to have to read these things, and in reading them, it brought back those memories. It brought back my identity as a Nubian Melanite, and how powerful I am as a young Black man growing up in this world. But those things are frowned upon, meaning that we no longer see it as a tool of power in this latter day, when it really is, because that's where all of our information is at.
Okay.
If you don't mind, Pastor, before you jump on, I just would like to add something that may bring some value to the listeners, something that I did with my children. I incentivized them to read. I picked out certain books. I have a lot of books, and I picked out certain books, and I put a dollar value on it. I would say, if you read this book, it's $5. This book is $3. This book is $10. So I taught them from a young age to get into reading, so much so that my eldest daughter mastered and got a degree in language and creative writing. She became so adept at reading because of first being incentivized and then developing the love for it, and it carried her straight through adult life.
If you don't mind, say that for everybody again. You incentivized reading by affixing a value to each
Dollar
book.
value to each book. Yeah. So, for example, they came before Columbus. I would put that book at $10. Um, the Miseducation of the Negro, I put that at $20. Depends on how complicated or how thick the book was. And then before I paid them, they had to do either a verbal book report, a PowerPoint, or just write out the few key things that you learned from the book. So the most important thing was I wanted them to read, but I wanted them to understand that reading books that bring value, that were by Black authors on topics that were important to Black people, were just as important as the Harry Potter book set you got in the room, or the Lord of the Rings book set that I bought for you. So it allowed them to get an early introduction to reading, and reading books that may seem complicated to children their age. Because it wasn't really about them grasping all of the knowledge in the book. Just tell me one or two things that stuck out. But I wanted them to get through those pages so deep down they would have that genetic attachment to the information in that book.
I would tell every father and mother out there, use that. For our young ones, I'm going to use it. And I know mom should be listening. So, and I will say for any children coming, make sure we start affixing a monetary value. I'm not putting no $20 on a little small book, though. I ain't Elder Owen. I ain't got that kind of money, right?
Compensatory
But I'm
code,
gonna
that's a
put, I'm gonna
$20
put
book.
some. I'm serious. A pound here, 2 pounds there. No, that makes sense.
Definitely.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
I'm going to adapt that, and I pray that all the mothers that are here and the fathers that are here, Brother Demarius, I pray your household will do that. I pray Sister Roxanne, if she's listening, that she will do that. So Brother Hildy, Sister Simone, I pray you will do that. I'm trying to think of all the people with little ones. Sister
Even the Cryptic
Azad, I
Revealers
pray.
process, that's a great $1 book,
Cryptic,
£1.
Right.
1 pound cryptic revealer. I'm just praying everybody's listening. Sister Sasha, if you're listening, Sister Sharice Hannah, you have some young ones. If you're listening, I'm trying to think who else is here. Anyway, just I wanted to stress that because I think that was a jewel. That's a gem. All right. Now, again, we're in week 2 with the discussion of overall personal reflection and growth, and I want to ask the two of you, bridging intergenerational divides, and this is important because of what Elder Owen, exactly what you just said, what the Brother Demarius was saying. I'm in school and I'm the nerd because I'm reading, and Elder Owen, I'm incentivizing the next generation. If each of you could speak to your generation to help connect them intergenerationally to the generation coming behind. I don't want Elder Owen to talk to the generation behind. I want you, Elder Owen, to talk to your generation, you, Brother Demarius, to talk to your generation and tell them what your generations need to do to interconnect to the generation before you as it pertains to personal reflection and as it pertains to bridging the divide. What are some things you've learned as a younger generation, Brother Demarius, you've learned as an older generation, Elder Owen, that you want to tell those in your age bracket or grouping need to be applied to be able to connect to the other generation?
Well, for me, one of the biggest things, Basesh, is I would encourage my generation, if I could speak to them, to embrace those that came before us. I never knew much about Elijah Muhammad until I joined the Holy Coptic Church and we read his book a few years ago, because I bought into the stereotypes of what was said about him. Autobiographies of these great teachers and understanding their stories, their struggles. See, when you read an autobiography of an Arthur Ashe or Muhammad Ali, someone that was able to achieve through adversity, that had struggles in their life, that came up where the system was against them. They weren't projected to be a success, but they did something worthwhile with their life. When we connect with those stories, we can now see what's possible for us. Being disconnected from the success of those greats that came before us, it puts such a low bar of expectation on our lives. And it allowed an escape door so that we don't have to feel the pressure of having to stand up and make a difference in our generation for the next generation. Because we are Go ahead.
I was going to say, okay, So how would you take that and tell your generation to help deal with the younger generations?
Because we have to follow that example.
Okay.
Why is Marcus Garvey's work so important? Because it created and gave birth to Elijah Muhammad. It gave birth to Louis Farrakhan. This continuation was because someone saw the example, grabbed that example, and then made sure others knew the example and followed the blueprint that was set before them. And 100 years later, it's still prominent and still impactful because it was proven to work. So when I can grab individuals of my generation and say, guys, let's do what they did. Let's go in schools and mentor young boys like they did after school. Let's go ahead and find single mothers in our communities and even outside of our communities where they're having trouble with these young boys and they won't listen. And let's create a Friday Boys Club. I did a boys club here in Nassau. I did a careers club where we were able to take young boys and girls and bring them together so they can see careers that they can be a part of. We took them to the airport and they were able to sit in the cockpit of planes and speak to pilots and understand what it takes to be a pilot. They spoke to Marine officers. They spoke to farmers. They spoke with teachers. They spoke with business owners and the water depot and how to run a water business because they have to see success from people that look like them and understand that the world's definition of success is not our definition of success. Our definition of success needs to be what skills, what opportunities that I have that will allow my people to become employed, to allow my people to become self-determination because they have the environment, they have the financial ability, they have the interconnectedness to work together to bring a better future for us, not to be an employee, although you may be well paid, although you may have a high rank for someone else that doesn't look like you and me. How can you take your skills and impact it into your community? And when we follow the blueprint, and the example that others gave, we now get up off our butts and we become an active participant in the liberation process for our people.
Okay, Brother Demarius, take it there. Again, you are talking to those people in your age bracket, age 25 to 40, let's say, right? How do you, or what do you say to them at this moment that they or you can be doing to interconnect to the generation of people who came before you? What do you all need to be doing and how should it be done? What do you say?
It's a lot very similar to what Elder Owen was saying, because he said if we start following the examples of those that came before us, they will get involved, they will see the success. So in that, you have to become the example. See, none of this happens. None of the young people that's currently growing up, we will see them we will continue to see the gorillas get, you know, the awards for best gospel artists. We will continue to see our young daughters shake their tails on the internet and think being naked is okay, or our young men fighting and drinking and smoking, cursing each other out if there's no examples in our communities. So you have to first become the example. And the best way to become the example is to join something, whether that be whether that be a few brothers in the community that's getting together and they make sure that they go to the elementary schools to make sure the young people are fed, whether that may be a father coalition, a whole bunch of Black fathers coming together and say, hey, we need to gather our young men, make sure they know how to dress, make sure they know how to walk upright, make sure that they're respectful, make sure they shake each other's hands, make sure they know the basics of how to change a tire, make sure they know the basics of how to cut grass, anything in that way. Being that example and making sure we get out in our communities and showing that example is the best way to move forward with having a better future for future generations. Because without being that example, they're not going to hear you. They're not going to hear
Yeah.
you. They need to see what it is you're doing. You can say something to them, but it's not until they see that you actually doing it where they're like, okay, I see my uncle, or I see my cousin, or I see this brother over here. He's doing it and he's showing it. It's not just words, because in this latter day, we got a lot of lip service from people. They say they doing this and they say they doing that, or we need to do this, but they're not putting anything together. They're not putting any institutions together to make sure we have that kind of success. But being that
Right.
example is like some of the things I see in Greenville. I know a young brother I grew up in school with. He has a Young Brothers Academy where he gets funding and scholarships for the young black man. Make sure he goes to the schools and speaks with the teachers, making sure that their grades are right, making sure they're getting scholarships to go to college and to actually be successful in their career and things like that. We need those kind of examples in this latter day. That's the best way to do it.
And Pastor, just before we go, one of the things also that's tangible that someone can actually do is at my barber shop where I go to get my hair cut in the inner city, in our community, deep in our communities, we established a movie night where we would have popcorn and hot dogs free for the kids, but we would show documentaries. We would show Marcus Garvey's speech. We would show Elijah Muhammad. We would show those type of things to the young boys. They would get a free haircut. They would eat a hot dog or popcorn and have a drink, but they were being exposed and introduced to these leaders. We did things like scholarship, where we provide scholarships for young kids. So there is so much that we can do, and our people must realize that it doesn't matter what your experience is. Your life experiences has a role to play in impacting the future, because Malcolm X was a career criminal that went to jail. And so I don't care how negative you may think your experiences are. We're taught in this church not to throw away your experiences, but to use that experience to impact knowledge and guidance on individuals that may be facing that similar experience or need some way to navigate it. And that's where resiliency comes in. How do we navigate these difficult times?
Amen. Okay, personal reflection again. Personal reflection and growth. Let me ask you two of this question. When it comes to our personal reflection and growth, how do we utilize our collective memory? What's the best way to utilize the collective memory, not just of the trauma and the anxieties, but traumas, anxieties, successes? How do we use the collective memory to connect these different generations and build a shared future based off of comprehending each other, understanding each other, and having an empathy that can actually perpetuate us into a more successful group results than individual results?
Who's that directed to?
Brother Damaris, you can go first.
Okay, so in order to one of the ways we can connect these memories, because when I was younger, I'm glad Dr. Ford actually spoke on the Black church and how at a time when we was getting, you know, through the Jim Crow era and the KKK even throughout slavery, the Black church was where we communed with one another. The Black church is where you brought all of those different scientists, different doctors, different lawyers, different even shoe shiners and different electricians and mechanics. All of us came together in that Black church. All of us came together under that one community, that one building to discuss where it is that we go forward. And it allowed us to share in those traumas, actually share in those joys. Because me growing up, what we call the hood in South Carolina, but it's not really a hood compared to a lot of the others. But when I was growing up, we had a reverend. His name was Reverend Golden. He would always come every Thursday. They had a mentor program, program at the church, where when we get out of school, get off the school bus, say we coming from elementary school, middle school, we'll go to the church. The church was kind of right behind the community. We would go to the church. They would say, "Hey, get out your homework. Well, what are you studying? Mathematics, science, whatever it may be. Okay, take out your homework. What's going on in class? Let me sit right here. Let me study this with you. Let me help you with your homework. And then on Fridays, we would go to the skating ring, teen arena, something that we had in Redemption. But the churches had things established for the community that we consistently did. And so we always shared that bond. We always spent time with each other. We always went swimming. We always had fun with one another. And during these times, that's when you would discuss the things that we go through, whether it's family trauma, whether we had a good time and our family, we had a family reunion. But the church is what needs to come together in this latter day to share that collective consciousness, to have that group setting. The Black church is where it has to start because it's very, very important. That's where we all are currently still at, as the even though we got people, a lot of conscious people, a lot of people that's leaving the church is still very alive and very present in our everyday lives. And a lot of us grew up like that. A lot of us learned how to sing at church. A lot of us learned how to play an instrument at church. A lot of us learned how to draw at church. A lot of us learned our first way to communicate or how to speak to a crowd of people at church. So I think church is a very pivotal role in establishing this collective consciousness and coming together and sharing in that remembrance and sharing in that trauma and sharing in that joy and sharing in the trials in which we face as a community and as a people in this latter day. And thankfully, we have the Holy Cup, the Church of the Black Messiah, saying, no, we're going to take the African out of Christianity. We're going to take the African out of Judaism. We're going to take the African out of Islam. It's giving us back our identity. And in this identity, in this body, the Holy Cup, the Church of the Black Messiah, we can all come together and share our true religious identity. So we don't have to continue to be subject to the slave master.
Amen. Amen.
Okay.
Elder Owen.
Yes, I would like to introduce another thought to this discussion, and that's a thought of gratitude. See, gratitude allows us to look at what sacrifices were made before us. So when we remember and we embrace that memory of our past successes from our people, that's the ultimate expression of gratitude, because it implies a sense of gratitude for our ancestors and their struggles and what they went through so that we could be in the position we are today. You know, individuals like Marcus Garvey, who said, a people without the knowledge of their past history, origin, and culture is like a tree without roots. There's a foundation of gratitude in that statement. When you don't know your ancestral achievements and accomplishments, and you're only introduced and re-emphasized about the negative and the hurtful and the traumatic and the bad and the stereotypes, and you have no connection to the greatness, it creates a dysfunctional person operating in this world. You will never be able to maximize your true potential because there's no balance there. We are taught about balancement and duality. We know that there are two sides to every coin. So an individual must be balanced, not just by knowing and becoming aware of what was done to us through this Holocaust, but also how we show gratitude to those that came before us by embracing their work, continuing their work, again, picking up that baton and running.
Elder Owen, you froze. All right, let's continue, and he'll come back in. Brother Demarius, are you still with us?
Yes, sir.
All right. We have well, we're looking okay. We got about 15 minutes, 14 minutes. I want to ask you a question on this idea. Remembrance and empathy. What were your initial emotional reactions when you first really began to learn about the atrocities of the Black Holocaust, such as the lynchings, the dehumanizations of people? Was your first reactions, and how did you act on those feelings? And I ask that question because I've spoken to people throughout my life, many people, men and women alike, And as they come into this level of awareness, awakening, or even sometimes in conversations, I'm talking about the Canaanite and the European and how they treat us. And they say, well, what am I supposed to do with that? I got to go deal with these people every day. I got to go work with these people every day. How do I deal with that? So I'm asking you, for those who will watch this program, who are watching now and may watch it later, or just now getting to the understanding of the Black, how did you react emotionally, mentally, physically, when you began to really learn about the atrocities of the African or Black Holocaust? And what or how did you deal with it? And how are you dealing with it today?
Ooh.
You can go any which way you want
That's
to take.
that's heavy. Initially, when I first started to hear about this, you know, our story, our narrative, what's happened to us as a people, I became extremely angry. I mean angry. Because I didn't have I had some people in my family tell me about it, but it was never what's been done to us was never brought to me as the full story, not knowing the history of the Baba Marcus Garveys and Baba Malcolm X, Baba Martin Luther King Jr. or BB Francis Cresswell, not knowing our true history. So when I was first presented with some conscious information, I was just angry all the time, and I spiraled. Meaning it was not in a controlled setting. So once I was reading the blueprint for Black Power from Dr. Amos Wilson, and then jumping into the ISIS papers, and then jumping into the YouTube videos and the Sinetas and the conscious teachings, I was just angry all the time, full of emotions. So 1 minute I'm angry, 1 minute I'm sad, 1 minute I'm chill, 1 minute I'm relaxing. I was just in it was a complete ball of chaos because it wasn't controlled. It actually got to a point, if you ask me, it was more so destructive than it was constructive, because I wasn't able to put this energy in places where I could move accordingly, because I was talking to my friends about it, I was talking to my family about it, I was talking at the barbershop about it, but every time I said I wanted to speak about it, it was all, you won't, you being too Black Power, or you being too radical, you gotta calm down, young man, don't nobody want to hear nothing about that black stuff. This is a lot of the things I was getting at the time that I started to see it, or having that insight, or waking up to it. At least was nobody around me trying to hear it. I did have one elder did tell me, he said, young man, you need to go to school, but I didn't listen to him. He was like, all that energy you got right now, you need to go to school and then take it from there. But I ain't listened to him at the time. So a lot, when I first heard this information, I was just angry. Any conversation I had with family or friends, it was more rah, rah, rah. Now we need to get our stuff together. We need to pack it up. We need to get ourselves armed. We need to fight back. It was a lot different than what it is now. It was totally different than what it is now. It was definitely, it actually took me more on a destructive path when it came to that, because I didn't have the kind of guidance, or I didn't have the person that kind of spoke to me and say, nah, young man, I understand what you're saying. This is how you need to direct that energy. This is what you need to do. This is how you need to prepare yourself. It was more trial and error when coming across it. And I didn't have that kind of empathy, because after reading all these books, you don't, after not reading all of them, but after learning this information and studying and seeing what's being done for us, I didn't have any empathy for what we was currently going through at the time, because a lot of the destruction has already been done to us as Nubian Melanites. I didn't have any empathy. I'm like, why we not doing something about it? What are we gonna do about it? It's not until I came across the Holy Cook, the Church of the Black Messiah, and Atonism, where I was able to bring all of that together and have that sense of calmness. It's not until I joined something that gave me the direction that I needed to be stable and to function properly, because I didn't take too well with the information that I was getting. And I didn't have no direction to go at the time that I had it. And that's why I pretty much tell everybody now, it's good. If you're a new person and you're listening, come join the Holy Covenant Church of the Black Messiah. This is the perfect place for you to start off your path, because you're gonna have instructions, you're gonna have rules. You're not gonna be able to just go out here and say and do everything. Matter of fact, it's actually gonna keep you from destroying yourself. It's gonna keep you from making certain mistakes or speaking about certain things. That's why I love the Holy Covenant Church of the Black Messiah, and that's why I appreciate it so much, because I can see how I first started off in my journey. If I was still like that today, I don't know what I'd be doing. I don't know. I probably would have destroyed everything around me and destroyed myself in the process, because I didn't have those instructions. I didn't have those rules. I didn't have those regulations. I didn't have somebody saying, no, no, it's all right to be mad. Okay, let's put that here. Let's go here. You know what? You angry about this? Okay, my brother, go to school. You know what? Study the scripture. Learn your doctrine. Be a better man. Those are the kind of things that have propelled me in this time now. But initially, when starting off and learning our information and about our history, not much good came from it, because I wasn't even applying what I was learning. It's more so just an angry, emotional, mad, upset reaction throughout the whole process. It was never geared towards anything sustainable, anything that was going to push us or propel us forward, not until I came to the Holy Covenant Church of the Black Messiah.
Thank you, Brother Demarius. That's an excellent answer. Elder Owen, let me tweak
Yes.
the question, and you can take it from here. Differences, when we talking about this memory, some differences that you can articulate to us between feeling guilty about the past, because sometimes I think a lot of our people don't want to look at the past because we feel guilty, we feel inadequate, we feel helpless. So what's the difference between feeling guilty, inadequate, or helpless about the past and taking responsibility for the present by utilizing that past? Do you understand?
Yeah, that's a great question. We have to, I heard someone use this terminology about trying to find a silver lining or the bright spot in everything. I live my life by a simple terminology that says it can always get worse. I don't care what it is, it can always get worse. When I lost my mom and my mom transitioned, it got worse because I lost my dad next. And we have to understand that in every situation, there's an opportunity to be thankful. Because thankfulness now must be identified in every moment so that the moment doesn't take you and hold you and causes someone to be in a situation where they spiral out of control and they lose themselves into that. So this life journey, and this is why this month's session is so important as we talk about resiliency and all of this mental terminology we're using. And because when you can't identify the thankfulness and the gratefulness opportunities and situations, that's when you get into this woe is me and you become bitter. We have to understand that as we look to make life better, not only for ourselves, but our people, we have to understand that moments will happen, situations will happen, experiences will happen. There are things that we've done that we're not proud of. We don't run away from it. We are taught in this church that we identify it, we label it, we tell our story, not to everyone on social media, but we tell our story to individuals that we care about, that are part of our inner circle, so that we can now identify how better to navigate that situation. How do I use better critical thinking? How do I use mindfulness? How do I use thankfulness in that situation? Because there are individuals going through the same exact situation you're going through, and they have no way of getting out of it. They spiral and they become engrossed and caught up in depression and shame, and they live there. That's living in hell. You're living on such a low frequency that you're in hell. So we have to understand that life is going to put circumstances and challenges to us every single day. And the universal law of perception, how do I perceive the situation? What can I learn from it? What is it teaching me? How can I now use my missteps to not make that misstep again? And how can I use that to now reach someone in a similar situation through compassion? Because now I've been through what you're going through. So I can speak to you not with sympathy, but with compassion and help you navigate it. We must not run away from the mistakes we made. We must be able to look back at that mistake to identify what was done wrong so we can blueprint the present, and now we can foretell the future by avoiding the traps and mistakes that we've made before and help others to do it. When you live in gratefulness and thankfulness, you will understand that every moment, I don't care how tough it is, every moment there's a thankfulness in it. When you lose someone, you say, I'm thankful I have my daughters. I'm thankful I can see the blue sky. I'm thankful I can smell. I can experience life. Although this is a painful moment, this is only a moment in my life existing, and it doesn't define me. We are taught that we are above these moments, observing and watching. So when you live in thankfulness, you are never caught up in regret, thinking you're a failure, thinking you're unworthy, and shame, because you understand that that's helping to mold you like someone that uses fire to mold a steel thing, creating something out of steel, or a potter that's shaping and using fire to bend and shape that clay. We're being molded through these tough times. That's where character and resilience comes from. That allows us to tap into that divine willpower from the creator that we call Hugi, which allows us to not just achieve, but to thrive in adverse situations. We are here today because our ancestors did not take shame and just embrace it and lived in it. They fought, they showed resiliency, and they overcame their challenges so that we can be here today. And now we must stand up. We must use the backbone that we have to stand up and not live in shame and regret. But how can I use my experiences to advance my people?
Gentlemen, awesome information both of you just provided. It's that time to wrap us up. So I'm going to thank both Elder Johnny Amun, known as Elder Owen Burroughs, and I'm going to thank Min Vizier Demarius Freeman, Brother Demarius Freeman, for joining us. This has been International African Holocaust Month 2025. This year's overall theme, and today at this moment we were discussing personal reflections. I pray that all three sessions today have done justice to the subject matter. I pray those who will watch this later on recording, and those of you who stayed for the 3 hours and may go back and rewatch it on the Holy Cryptic Church's YouTube page, QTV, that I pray you take notes and you share what you've learned with others. We thank you, and we give all praise and gratitude to the Most High Heavenly One, the great I Am, and Ray, the ever-yielding and forgiving, who has empowered melanated people to survive and thrive and continue to unify and continue to awaken and continue to do great things in spite of conditions that we may often face. I'm Rev. Dr. A.J. Varma. Thank you all for joining us. We'll see you again next week. Same time, 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, 4 p.m. GMT. Until then, be safe and continue to remember, we say never again. The African Holocaust, though it continues, it is our responsibility to end it and to say, as the Jewish people say for their Holocaust, never again. Namaste.
Namaste.